Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at a brand new archetype which is coming out of Burst of Destiny. From what I've seen of people's opinions of this archetype, they're very excited for this and are considering this to be the new meta. So the first one is Flundereeze x Empen. It's a level 10 wind attribute winged beast effect monster. It's got 2700 attack and 1000 defense. The first effect, if this card is tribute summoned, you can add one Flundereeze spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one monster. 2. While this tribute summoned monster is on the field, your opponent's special summoned monsters in attack position cannot activate their effects. And 3. If this card battles an opponent's monster, during damage calculation, you can banish one card from your hand. That opponent's monster's current attack and defense become halved until the end of this turn. So with the first effect, once it's tribute summoned, you're instantly able to then search for one of your spell or trap cards within the archetype. That's a decent enough effect. It also grants you with an additional normal summon. That means you're able to increase your field presence. That's always a good thing. The second part of the effect, once it's tribute summoned, the opponent's special summon monsters that are in attack mode cannot activate the effects. Most likely your opponent will have their special summon monsters in attack. That means it shuts all of their activated abilities down, and that puts them in a position where they can't use certain abilities, especially since a lot of players run more monster effects than they do on their spell and trap support. The final part of the effect acts a little bit like Gale the Whirlwind, but this actually happens when you attack into your opponent's monster. It doesn't happen during your main phase, which might come as a surprise to your opponent. It instantly halves your opponent's monster's attack and defense. That means that you can basically rip over all of their monsters. They would need an extremely powerful monster to be able to go over this. It would have to be well over 5,000 attack points to be unaffected by this effect, or just have some form of protection on itself, so protection from being destroyed in battle, to at least keep the monster on the field. My only concern is it does require you to banish a card from your hand, so you are having to discard to use this effect, which means technically you might not be going into a -1 if you rip apart your opponent's monster, but it's a bit of a cost from that side. Flundereeze x Snarl is a level 10 water attribute winged beast effect monster with 2900 attack and 800 defense. The effect is, once per turn, if you control this tribute summon card, you can activate this effect. You can conduct 3 normal summon sets this turn, not just 1. 2. While this tribute summoned monster is on the field, if your monster attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. And 3. Once per opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can banish one card from your hand. Change all opponent's special summon monsters to face down defense position. Now, I love the first part of the effect because you're able to summon 3 monsters in a turn. That's really unusual. You don't see this within Yu-Gi-Oh! At least not within the normal Yu-Gi-Oh! You do see this in Rush Duels at the moment, so it's nice. And it's definitely a unique effect. I can't think of any other examples of any archetypes, any unusual monsters that have this ability. The secondary ability is very lackluster. The piercing effect, okay, that's fine. That grants all of your monsters the ability to do piercing battle damage, which is okay. The third effect actually relies on the second ability as well, because you're able to banish a card from the hand and change all opponents' special summon monsters to face down defense position. You essentially Book of Moon them. That's brilliant because then you can actually attack over those monsters. They're most likely going to have low defense points, and therefore you're able to do the piercing battle damage as well, maybe being able to OTK, or at least prevent your opponent's monsters from activating their abilities. My only concern is this comes at a point where we already have Link monsters in the game, so Link monsters can't go into defense mode, so this effect doesn't work on those. That's my only concern. Outside of that, this works on any other of your opponent's special summon monsters. Flundereeze x Rabina is a level 1 water attribute winged beast effect monster. It's got 600 attack and 1200 defense. You can only use the first and third effects of this card's name each once per turn. Also, you cannot special summon the turn you activate either of these effects. 1. If this card is normal summoned, you can add one level 4 or lower winged beast monster from your deck to your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one winged beast monster. 2, if this face-up card leaves the field, you banish it. And 3, if a winged beast monster is normal summoned to your field, while this card is banished, you can add this card to your hand. I like the design of this card. I think it's actually very useful and actually recycles itself really effectively. For starters, the first effect just lets you search for any of your other Flundereeze monsters. They're all winged beast monsters, or you can just go for any of the other monsters if you prefer. It also grants you a ability to normal summon again within that turn, and this seems to be a common theme within the Flundereeze monsters, that you're able to grant additional normal summons within the turn. The secondary ability, if the card leaves the field, you banish it, that's fine. You're probably going to use it for a tribute anyway, and its stat lineup isn't worth it keeping around. If anything, it actually makes it a giant target if it was to be kept around. And the final effect, if you happen to summon a winged beast monster, you can then re-add this card to your hand from the banish pile. Again, you're just able to recycle this card constantly, which helps to not require you to run very, specific cards within the deck. Flundereeze X Eaglin is a level 1 wind attribute winged beast effect monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense. You can only use the first and third effects of this card's name each once per turn. Also, you cannot special summon the turn you activate either of those effects. 1. If this card is normal summoned, you can add one level 7 or higher winged beast monster from your deck to your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one winged beast monster. 2. If this face-up card leaves the field, banish it. And 3. If a winged beast monster is normal summoned to your field, while this card is banished, you can add this card to your hand. Okay, so for this, it seems to be a very reoccurring theme here. The first effect just helps you search for one of your higher level winged beast monsters, whereas Robin searches for one of the lower ones, and it also grants it the ability to have an additional normal summon within the turn. The secondary ability is obviously if it's tributed and sent basically to the graveyard, you banish it. And the third effect is if you happen to have a winged beast summoned, you then re-add this to the hand. It's just more recycling of the same cards. Flundereeze X Strick is a level 1 water attribute winged beast effect monster. It's got 700 attack and 1100 defense. You can only use the first and third effects of this card's name once per turn each. Also, you cannot special summon the turn you activate either of those effects. 1. If this card is normal summoned, you can target one card in either graveyard, banish it, then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one winged beast monster. 2. If this face-up card leaves the field, banish it. And 3. If a winged beast monster is normal summoned to your field while this card is banished, you can add this card to your hand. Again, second and third effects are the same. You basically, once it leaves the field, you banish it. Once a winged beast monster is summoned to the field, you get to bring this card back to the hand. You're constantly being able to recycle those resources. The first ability is unique to it in that you're able to target any card in the graveyard and then you're able to banish it. It's very useful if you know what your opponent is trying to run and what they're planning, as you can get rid of key cards they might not be able to revive, as not everyone runs cards that have banish pile recovery. Flundereeze X Token is a level 1 wind attribute winged beast effect monster with 500 attack and 1300 defense. You can only use the first and third effects of this card's name each once per turn. Also, you cannot special summon the turn you activate either of those effects. 1. If this card is normal summoned, you can target one of your banished Flundereeze cards, add it to your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon one winged beast monster. 2. If this face-up card leaves the field, banish it. And 3. If a winged beast monster is normal summoned to your field, while this card is banished, you can add this card to your hand. Second and third effect are the same as before. You banish it basically when it leaves the field. That means usually if it's been tributed for the tribute summon, and then it gets added back to the hand if you summon a winged beast monster. The first ability is being able to recover one of the banished Flundereeze monsters, and it grants another additional normal summon of a winged beast monster. This adds to the consistency because, for example, if you don't happen to be able to recover any of your banished Flundereeze monsters for some reason, you're able to just normal summon this and then search for that card back. Flundereeze and Mysterious Map is the field spell card with the effect. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name each once per turn. 1. During a main phase, you can reveal one level 1 Flundereeze monster in your hand, and if you do, banish one Flundereeze card with a different name from your deck. Then immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon the revealed monster. 2, if your opponent normal summons a monster, you can, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon one Flundereeze monster. The purpose of this card is just to give you additional normal summons to be able to give you the monsters necessary to go into your tribute summoned boss monsters. The first effect is actually decent enough because you're able to just banish a card from your deck, which is fine. You can always search for that Flundereeze monster. It can always be recovered back to the hand through its own ability through the third effect, and you're able to just grant another normal summon. The second ability actually helps to defend your life points because you're able to then maybe summon that in defense mode and either protect yourself from an attack or to provide you with more field presence. If you've got something that can protect your life points for the rest of the turn, then you're fine because then you're able to then recover those cards and then go into that tribute summoned monster. Flundereeze and the Unknown Wind is a continuous spell card with the effect you can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. You can conduct a tribute summon that requires 2 tributes by sending 1 monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls to the graveyard instead of tributing. It is still treated as a tribute summon. 2. During your main phase, you can reveal up to 2 winged beast monsters in your hand and place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, then draw the same number of cards. The first effect reminds me a lot of Monarch Stormforth because you're able to use one of your opponent's monsters as part of the tribute summon. It's decent because that way you're not just using up your resources, you're actually expending your opponent's. Think of things like the kaijus. One of the main problems of dealing with your opponent's monsters tends to be if they've got effects that happen when they're destroyed or sent to the graveyard by some sort of effect. They end up triggering themselves or help to, further their combos. By doing this, you put your opponent in a clock where they can't actually use their resources and you're actually using their resources against them. And if they've got no other cards to protect themselves, maybe you're then able to get rid of some of their more powerful effect monsters that are probably stalling you. The secondary effect is actually also very decent because both of these effects can be used. And it's not that it's a once per duel effect or much more than just a once per turn effect. They can be used independently or both together within the same turn. This helps to fix your hand if you happen to draw into the monsters that you might not need. You can just return those 2 wing beast monsters and then draw for the same number of cards. Okay, they do go to the bottom of the deck, but that's fine. If you're constantly recycling your cards, you're going to be able to access those at some point at some stage. And you're able to draw into consistent cards through a pot of greed effect every turn. Consider this being a continuous spell card, and this is so much superior to things such as Reload, which require you to shuffle your entire hand back in the chance of you getting something more consistent. Whereas this, you're getting the choice as to what you send back, and then having the option, whatever you draw into, you can always replace on later turns if you need that structure. Flundereeze and the City of Dreams is a normal trap card with the effect you can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. During the main phase, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 level 4 or lower winged beast monster. 2. If you tribute summon a level 7 or higher monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, change all monsters your opponent controls to face down defense position. I love the design of this card as well. You're instantly able to normal summon a low level monster, and it happens to be a winged beast monster, which all the Flundereeze monsters are. And the secondary ability, if you happen to tribute summon for one of your boss monsters, then you're able to just banish this and you're able to Book of Moon all of your opponent's monsters. That stops them essentially from using any of their disruptive monster effects or anything that's just going to get in your way. And then you're able to then outright destroy some of your opponent's monsters, maybe being able to turn around the duel. It's definitely something you want to be running maybe 2 to 3 copies of. And the final card is Flundereeze and the Scary Sea. It's a counter trap card with the effect you can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. 1. If you control a face-up tribute summoned monster and no special summon monsters, and your opponent would special summon a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, but they can conduct 3 normal summons or sets this turn, not just 1. Also negate the summon, and if you do, return that monster to the hand. I think this card is very unique, and I love I'm smiling because I love the design of it. It counters your opponent's ability to special summon basically from either their deck, their hand, or their extra deck. It shuts those down because what it does is it returns that monster that's summoned to the hand, or if it happens to be an extra deck monster, back to the extra deck. It stops them from being able to special summon for the rest of the turn. That means you can stop them if they're planning to go all in that turn. You stop them from doing that. It doesn't necessarily punish them as heavily because they are able to still normal summon up to 3 times within that turn. So they're not so much on a disadvantage as if you were to unfairly use like triple versions of Solemn Judgment or something along those lines. I would consider that to be unfair. But in this case, they still have the opportunity to have a field presence for them. It just means they can't exceed summon or go into any of the extra deck monsters for that turn, which gives you the opportunity on your next turn to be able to beat over those monsters, and therefore they don't have the advantage they might have thought they had. This does give them flexibility. They can summon multiple times within that turn, or they might choose not to do so. It's completely up to the opponent. Overall, I love the design of the deck. I think the archetype is so powerful and definitely one of the best wing beast type monsters since things like Raid Raptors and Black Wings. I love that these are both a combination of wind attribute and water attribute monsters, much like what the decks are supposed to be, and very supportive of that. There are so many splashed cards you can use, and definitely I feel more comfortable with this type of deck. I can see why it will become a fan favourite. It combines very weak monsters, very weak consistent monsters that are level 1s, with high level monsters, 2 boss high level monsters. And I love the fact that they're introducing tribute summoning rather than going into the extra deck. It's a refreshing change of pace that I think Yugioh has been lacking for so many years now, ever since things like the Monarchs. And if they were to introduce more of these types of decks, I think some of the older players will be encouraged to come back into the game. I don't see too many downsides of the deck. They can be recovered over time. I will probably be reviewing some counter cards for this going into the future, and some key cards that you might want to pick up. I know MCL40 has looked at the top 5 cards you will have when you want to pick this deck up, and I'll be making a video similar to that, separate with my own opinions of this. But whatever you think of these Flundereeze monsters, please leave those in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.